My name is Eden, and I am 27 years old. I used to believe that family meant everything. I used to think that no matter what happened in life, my parents would always be there when I needed them most. I held on to that belief like a child holds on to a favorite blanket, refusing to let go, even when the fabric started to wear thin. But there was one day that changed everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, and about where I truly stood in my own family. It was the day I lay in an emergency room completely alone while my parents rushed to help my older sister because she got a $355 traffic ticket. That was the day I learned exactly where I stood. Before I share what happened, I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because this story changed everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. And I think you might see a little bit of your own story in mine. So, let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and Friday night football games are the highlight of the week. Our house was a modest two-story colonial on Maple Street, painted white with green shutters that my father repainted every few years. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But appearances, as I would learn, can be deceiving. My father, Richard, was 58 years old and worked as a manager at an auto parts manufacturing plant about 20 miles from our house. He was a quiet man, the kind who expressed love through providing rather than through words or affection. He left for work early every morning and came home tired every evening, retreating to his recliner with the newspaper or the television remote. My mother, Diane, was 55 and worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a dental clinic in town. She was the social one, always organizing family dinners and keeping track of everyone's schedules. And then there was my sister, Brooke, 4 years older than me at 31. Brooke was everything I was not. She had inherited our mother's golden blonde hair and striking blue eyes, while I got our father's plain brown hair and brown eyes. Where Brooke was outgoing and charming, I was quiet and introspective. Where she loved being the center of attention, I preferred curling up with a book in my room. Brooke had been the star of our family since the day she was born, or at least that is how it always felt to me. Growing up, I watched as Brooke collected achievements like trophies. She was on the cheerleading squad, voted homecoming queen her senior year, and had a string of popular boyfriends that my parents always approved of. Her photographs lined the walls of our living room, her medals and certificates displayed proudly on the mantel. There was Brooke at her dance recital, Brooke accepting her cheerleading award, Brooke crowned prom queen with a tiara sparkling on her head. My accomplishments, on the other hand, seemed to exist in the margins. When I got straight A's on my report card, my father would glance at it, nod, and say good job before returning to his newspaper. When I won third place in the county writing competition, a contest that had over 200 entries, I ran home bursting with excitement to tell my mother. But she was on the phone with Brooke discussing which dress she should wear to some end-of-year dance. My mother waved her hand at me to wait, and by the time she hung up, she had forgotten I was even there. When I reminded her about my award, she smiled absently and said, "That is nice, honey," then asked me to help set the table for dinner. The birthday parties told the story most clearly. Brooke's birthdays were events complete with catered food, dozens of guests, and elaborate themes. My 16th birthday was celebrated with a homemade cake, just our immediate family, and a card with $50 inside. I told myself it did not matter that I preferred quiet celebrations anyway. But deep down, the difference stung in ways I could not articulate. Despite all of this, I loved my family. I convinced myself that my parents loved both of us equally, they just showed it in different ways. I told myself that Brooke was simply more demanding, more visible, and that my quieter nature meant I needed less attention. I believed that when it really mattered, when I truly needed them, my parents would be there for me without question. By 27, I had built a life for myself outside of my family's shadow. I had worked hard in school, earned my nursing degree, and secured a position at Riverside General Hospital about 40 minutes from my hometown. I lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment that I paid for entirely on my own. It was not much, but it was mine. I kept in touch with my family, calling my mother every Sunday, driving home for major holidays. The relationship was not as close as I wished it could be, but I thought it was stable. I thought it was enough. Brooke, meanwhile, had married a man named Derek who sold insurance. They lived in a nice house that my parents had helped them put the down payment on, just 10 minutes from our childhood home. Brooke worked at a furniture store but complained about it, constantly frequently calling our parents to ask for money for unexpected expenses. And our parents always gave it to her, no questions asked. I had accepted my position in the family hierarchy. I did not demand attention or validation. I simply existed on the periphery, grateful for whatever crumbs of love and acknowledgement I received. I thought that was just how families worked, that some children naturally got more attention than others, and that it did not mean I was loved any less. I had no idea that in just a few weeks this belief would be shattered in the most painful way imaginable. The day that changed everything started like any other. It was a Saturday in early October, the leaves just beginning to turn shades of orange and gold. I had worked the overnight shift at the hospital, 12 hours on my feet, tending to patients, and I finally walked through my apartment door at 7 in the morning, exhausted down to my bones. I kicked off my shoes, made myself some toast with peanut butter, and sent a quick text to my mother. "Just finished my shift," I wrote. "How are you and Dad doing?" She replied a few minutes later with her typical brief response. "We are fine. Get some rest." I smiled at my phone, grateful for even that small acknowledgement, and crawled into bed. I must have fallen asleep quickly because the next thing I knew I was waking up to a sharp pain in my abdomen. I glanced at the clock. It was 10 in the morning, just 3 hours since I had laid down. I pressed my hand against my lower right side, wincing at the tenderness there. I assumed it was something I ate, maybe the questionable Chinese takeout I had grabbed during my break the night before. I found some ibuprofen in my medicine cabinet, swallowed 2 pills, and tried to go back to sleep. But the pain would not let me rest. Over the next hour and a half, it grew from a dull ache to a sharp stabbing sensation that made me curl into a fetal position. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead. Nausea churned in my stomach, and I barely made it to the bathroom in time before I started vomiting. I sat on the cold tile floor shaking and forced myself to think clinically. I was a nurse. I knew the signs. Right lower quadrant pain, tenderness, nausea, vomiting, fever. My hands were trembling as I took my temperature. 102 degrees. Everything pointed to acute appendicitis, and if I was right, I needed surgery immediately. A ruptured appendix could be fatal. I could not drive myself. I could barely stand without the room spinning around me. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, explaining my symptoms as calmly as I could manage through the pain. They told me an ambulance was on the way. While waiting for the paramedics, I made another call, the one that would haunt me for months to come. I called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Eden." "What is it, Mom?" My voice came out weak, thin. "I think I have appendicitis." I called 911. "They are taking me to Riverside General. Can you and Dad come?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Appendicitis. Are you sure? Can it wait?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. "Mom, this is an emergency. My appendix could rupture. I need surgery. Please come." She was quiet for a moment longer. "Let me talk to your father. We will call you back." I heard the wail of sirens in the distance growing closer. "Okay," I said. "Please hurry." The paramedics arrived within minutes. 2 efficient professionals who helped me onto a stretcher and into the back of the ambulance. They started an IV line and checked my vitals while the vehicle lurched into motion. The whole time I kept my phone clutched in my hand, waiting for my mother to call back. She never did. By the time we reached the hospital, I was in so much pain that I could barely focus on anything else. But I kept glancing at my phone screen, waiting for a notification that never came. Nurses I recognized from my own shifts wheeled me through the emergency department, their faces shifting from professional detachment to genuine concern when they realized I was one of their own. The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Reyes, examined me quickly and ordered an immediate CT scan. The results confirmed what I already knew: acute appendicitis. Surgery was scheduled for as soon as the operating room could be prepared. "Do you have family coming?" Dr. Reyes asked gently. I nodded, even though I was no longer sure. My parents are on their way. That was when I finally decided to call my mother again. The surgery was imminent. I needed to hear her voice, needed to know someone who loved me was coming. This time she picked up immediately. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking. They confirmed it. "I'm going into surgery now. Please come." I am scared. What she said next broke something inside me that I did not know could break. "Eden, honey, there is a situation. Your sister just called. She got pulled over and got a $355 ticket. She is very upset and needs us to go to her. Can you handle things there for now? We will come later." The words did not make sense at first. I repeated them back to her, sure I had misheard. "You are choosing Brooke's traffic ticket over me being in surgery." "It is not like that," my mother said, her voice defensive. "Brooke is hysterical right now. She needs us. You are in the hospital, the doctors will take care of you. We will come as soon as we calm her down." I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, to beg, but before I could say anything else, she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, the screen going dark, and felt something inside my chest collapse. It was not just disappointment. It was the kind of devastation that rewrites everything you thought you knew about yourself and the people you love. A nurse came to my bedside. "Ms. Thompson, we are ready to take you to the operating room now." I looked up at her, barely able to focus through the haze of pain and tears. "Is there anyone you would like us to contact? Anyone who should be here when you wake up?" I shook my head slowly, the movement sending fresh waves of agony through my body. "No," I whispered. "There is no one." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I stared up at the fluorescent lights passing overhead and felt more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. Somewhere across town, my parents were rushing to comfort my sister over a traffic ticket, and I was about to undergo emergency surgery with no one waiting for me on the other side. That was the moment I understood, truly understood exactly where I stood in my own family, and the knowledge was more painful than any inflamed appendix could ever be. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was the bright lights of the operating room bearing down on me like artificial suns. The anesthesiologist, a kind-faced man with gray at his temples, asked if there was anyone I wanted to call before we began. "There is no one," I said again, and the words tasted like ash in my mouth. He gave me a look of quiet sympathy, then told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before the world dissolved into darkness. When I woke up, I was in the recovery room, groggy and disoriented. The first thing I did was look to my left, then to my right, hoping against hope that I would see a familiar face. My mother's worried frown, my father's awkward hovering. Anyone. But the only person in the room was a recovery nurse checking my vitals on a monitor. "The surgery went well," she said when she noticed I was awake. "Dr. Reyes got the appendix out before it ruptured. You were lucky." Lucky. The word felt like a cruel joke. "Did anyone come?" I asked, my throat raw and scratchy. "Any family?" She checked her notes and shook her head. "Not yet, sweetie, but visiting hours are still open. I am sure someone will come soon." I nodded and turned my head toward the window, watching the late afternoon light filter through the blinds. I did not have the heart to tell her that no one was coming. They moved me to a regular room around 4 in the afternoon. It was a private room, which I was grateful for. I did not want a roommate to witness my humiliation. I lay there in the bed, still groggy from the anesthesia, and stared at my phone. No missed calls, no voicemails, just one single text message from my mother sent 2 hours ago. "Hope surgery went well. We are still with Brooke. We'll try to come tomorrow. We'll try to come tomorrow." I read those words over and over until they lost all meaning, until they were just shapes on a screen. My parents knew I was having emergency surgery. They knew I was alone and scared, and the best they could offer was they would try to come tomorrow. I put the phone down on the bedside table and let the tears come. I cried silently, my shoulders shaking, the sobs trapped in my chest, because even now, even after everything, I did not want anyone to hear. I did not want anyone to know how pathetic I was, lying here alone after surgery, abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The hours crawled by. 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. The dinner tray came and went untouched. I could not eat. I could barely move. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my heart would leap with hope, only to sink again when they passed by my door without stopping. At 6:15, there was a knock. I tensed, unsure whether to hope or brace myself. "Come in." I called, my voice weak. The door opened, and there stood Megan. Megan Rodriguez was 29 years old, Puerto Rican, born and raised in the Bronx before moving to Ohio for nursing school. She had dark, curly hair that she usually kept pulled back in a practical ponytail, warm brown eyes that could shift from compassionate to fierce in a heartbeat, and a personality that could fill any room she entered. We had worked together in the same unit for 3 years, and somewhere along the way she had become my best friend. She was holding a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. "Girl," she said, her eyes widening when she saw me in the hospital bed. "What in the world happened? I heard through the grapevine that you were brought in this morning. Appendicitis. And you did not even call me." I tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. Everything happened so fast. I called my parents. Megan set the flowers in the bag down on the bedside table and pulled a chair close to my bed. "And where are they?" The question hung in the air between us. I did not want to answer. I did not want to say the words out loud, because saying them would make them real in a way I was not ready to accept. But Megan just sat there, waiting, her eyes gentle but persistent. So I told her. Everything. The phone calls, my mother's choice, the text message. Every humiliating detail. By the time I finished, Megan's face had transformed. Her compassion had hardened into something sharper, something that looked a lot like rage. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly, as if she needed to hear it again to believe it. "You were having emergency surgery. Your appendix could have burst. You could have died. And your parents chose to go hold your 31-year-old sister's hand because she got a speeding ticket. It was a red light violation," I said, though I had no idea why I was clarifying. $355. Megan stared at me. Eden. What kind of parents do that? I did not have an answer. I had been asking myself the same question for hours. Megan stayed with me that night. She made herself comfortable in the stiff visitor's chair, refusing to leave even when I told her she did not have to. She fed me soup from the bag. She had brought actual good soup from the deli down the street, not the watery hospital broth. She told me stories about her family, about growing up with 4 siblings in a 2-bedroom apartment, about how her mother would have moved heaven and earth to be at any of their bedsides. When the nurses came to check on me, they saw Megan there and smiled knowingly. The night shift nurses were used to seeing us together during our breaks, grabbing coffee and complaining about difficult patients. "Your friend is a keeper," one of them said. I looked at Megan, who had dozed off in the chair, her head at an awkward angle that would definitely give her a crick in her neck tomorrow. "Yeah," I said softly, "she is." Late that night, when the hospital had settled into its quiet nighttime rhythm, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Megan's breathing was slow and steady beside me, a comforting presence in the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened, about all the years I had spent convincing myself that my parents loved me just differently than they loved Brooke, about how I had excused their favoritism, rationalized their neglect, accepted crumbs when I deserved so much more. I thought about how I had ended up alone on an operating table, wondering if anyone would even notice if I died. And I thought about Megan, who had shown up without being asked, who had sat with me through the long night simply because she cared. The truth crystallized in the darkness with painful clarity. I had spent my whole life chasing the love of people who would never prioritize me. And meanwhile, I had almost overlooked the people who already did. Megan took time off to drive me home when I was discharged 2 days later. She fussed over me like a mother hen, making sure I had my medications, helping me get settled on my couch with pillows and blankets, stocking my refrigerator with easy-to-prepare meals. My parents never came to the hospital. Not the first day, not the second. Just a few brief phone calls from my mother asking how I was feeling, chatting about mundane things as if nothing had happened. As if she had not abandoned me in my moment of greatest need. A week after my surgery, when I was feeling well enough to drive, I decided to go home and confront them. I needed to look them in the eyes and tell them how much they had hurt me. I needed to give them a chance to apologize to make things right. Part of me still hoped that they would see what they had done and feel remorse, that they would hold me and tell me they were sorry and promise to do better. I should have known better. When I walked through the front door of my childhood home, the first thing I heard was Brooke's voice, loud and indignant, carrying from the dining room. The officer was completely unreasonable. I was barely past the intersection when the light turned red. It was yellow when I entered. Everyone knows that is not a violation. I followed the sound and found the whole family gathered around the dinner table. My parents, Brooke, and her husband, Derek. They looked up when I entered, but only my mother stood to greet me. "Eden," she said, giving me a brief hug. "How are you feeling? You look better. Better. As if I had recovered from a cold instead of emergency surgery." "I am healing," I said carefully, looking around the room. It was the first time I had seen any of them since before my hospitalization. My father nodded from his seat at the head of the table. "Good. Glad to hear it. Have a seat." We were just talking about Brooke's situation. Of course you were, I thought. But I sat down anyway, taking the empty chair at the end of the table, the one farthest from the center of activity. For the next 20 minutes I listened as my family dissected every detail of Brooke's traffic violation. The unfairness of the officer, the possibility of contesting the ticket, whether they should hire a lawyer. My father offered to pay for legal representation if needed. My mother nodded enthusiastically. Derek, as usual, said nothing of substance. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, and felt the anger building inside me like a slow, burning fire. Finally, when there was a pause in the conversation, I spoke. "Mom, Dad, do you realize that I was in surgery while you were helping Brooke with a traffic ticket? I could have died on that operating table and no one from my family was there." The room went silent. Brooke stopped mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open. Derek suddenly found his plate very interesting. My parents exchanged a glance that I could not interpret. My father was the first to respond. "Eden, you are being dramatic. You did not die. The surgery went fine. Brooke needed us at that moment. She was very upset. I felt like I had been slapped. My mother chimed in. We knew the doctors would take care of you. Brooke was hysterical on the phone. What were we supposed to do?" "Leave her alone." I stared at them, searching their faces for any sign of remorse, any hint that they understood what they had done. But all I saw was defensiveness. Irritation, even. They genuinely did not understand why I was upset. So, Brooke being upset about a ticket is more important than me being in emergency surgery. I asked, my voice shaking despite my efforts to keep it steady. Before my parents could respond, Brooke rolled her eyes. "Eden, stop making everything about you. I was having a really bad day. You always do this, making yourself the victim. You were in a hospital with doctors and nurses taking care of you. I was alone on the side of the road with a cop threatening to tow my car. I turned to look at my sister. Really look at her, and for the first time in my life I did not see the golden child I had always envied. I saw a 31-year-old woman who had been coddled her entire life, who genuinely believed her minor inconvenience was more important than her sister's health. And I saw that she would never change because no one had ever required her to. Derek sat in silence through the entire exchange, his eyes fixed on his dinner plate. He did not defend me. He did not defend Brooke. He simply did not engage at all, and somehow his absence of action was its own kind of betrayal. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I understand now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I always thought maybe I was imagining things. that you loved us equally, just differently. But tonight, you made it very clear. I am not a priority. I never was. My mother stood too, reaching for my arm. Eden, do not be so sensitive. We love you. We just had to make a choice in the moment. I looked at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. And you chose, I said quietly. That is all I needed to know. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove home. I did not cry. I had cried enough. Instead, I felt something shift inside me, a door closing on the girl who had spent her whole life hoping for crumbs of love from people who had none to spare for her. That night, I sat alone in my dark apartment and realized that for 27 years I had been lying to myself. I had accepted less than I deserved because I was afraid of the alternative. But now I had seen the truth, and there was no going back. I did not know what came next, but I knew I could not keep living like this. The weeks following that dinner were some of the hardest and most transformative of my life. I made a conscious decision to step back from my family. I did not cut them off completely, but I stopped being the one who reached out, stopped being available whenever they needed something, stopped pretending that everything was fine. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, picking up extra shifts and volunteering for tasks that no one else wanted. My supervisor noticed my dedication and began mentioning opportunities for advancement. I started to see my job not just as a way to pay bills, but as a career I could build and be proud of. And I invested in the relationships that actually nourished me. Megan became my anchor. We spent our days off together, going to movies, trying new restaurants, taking long walks through the park near my apartment. She introduced me to her family, a loud and loving group who welcomed me with open arms. Her mother, a tiny woman with silver-streaked hair and an infectious laugh, declared that any friend of Megan's was family. You come to Sunday dinner, she told me firmly. Every week, no arguments. I also started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Hammond, a calm and insightful woman in her 50s who specialized in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect. With her help, I began to unpack years of buried hurt, to understand the patterns that had shaped my self-worth, to recognize that the way my family treated me was not a reflection of my value as a person. You were cast in a role from a very young age, Dr. Hammond explained during one of our sessions. The forgotten child. The low-maintenance one. Your parents found it easier to focus on Brooke's louder needs, and you adapted by making yourself invisible. But that does not mean you deserved less attention. It means you deserved parents who could see past the surface. The first test came at Thanksgiving. My mother called a few days before the holiday, her voice casual as she rattled off plans for the family dinner. We are doing it at Brooke's house this year, she said. She just redecorated her dining room and wants to show it off. Come around too. I took a deep breath before responding. Actually, Mom, I will not be there this year. I have to work. It was a lie. I had traded shifts specifically so that I would not have to work on Thanksgiving. But I was not ready to face them again. And, more importantly, I had other plans. What do you mean you have to work? My mother's voice sharpened with disapproval. It is a family holiday. Can't you switch with someone I already tried? I said, keeping my voice even. It did not work out. Maybe next year. There was a long pause. Your father will be disappointed. I doubt that I thought. But what I said was, tell him I am sorry. I spent Thanksgiving at Megan's house instead, crammed around a table with her parents, her 4 siblings, their spouses, and a parade of children ranging from toddlers to teenagers. The food was incredible, a fusion of traditional Thanksgiving dishes and Puerto Rican specialties that Megan's mother had been making for decades. The conversation was loud and chaotic, with multiple discussions happening at once and children weaving between chairs. At one point, Megan's mother looked across the table at me and smiled. You fit right in Eden. I am glad Megan found you. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but for the first time in weeks they were not tears of sadness. When my mother found out I had spent Thanksgiving elsewhere, she was furious. How could you do this to us? She demanded over the phone. What will people think I listened to her tirade without interrupting? When she finally ran out of steam, I said, "Mom, I spent my emergency surgery alone because you chose to be with Brooke over a traffic ticket. I think I have earned the right to choose where I spend my holidays." She sputtered, caught off guard. That was different. That was an emergency. "So was mine," I said quietly, and I hung up. Brooke called later that same day, but her approach was different. She did not yell. She guilt-tripped. "Mom is really upset, Eden. You are tearing this family apart. Why can't you just let things go back to normal?" I considered her words carefully before responding. "Brooke, have you ever even once thought about how I felt that day in the hospital?" There was a pause. "That was months ago. You need to let it go." "I am letting go," I said. "Just not the way you expected." My father called the following week, which was unusual. He rarely initiated contact with anyone. "Your mother is upset," he said, his voice gruff. "This family nonsense needs to stop. Come home for Christmas at least." I almost laughed. Even his appeal was about my mother's feelings, not about wanting to see me. "Dad, do you even understand why I am distant?" He was quiet for a moment. "I think you are overreacting about the hospital thing. We all make mistakes." "The mistake was not coming," I said. "The problem is that none of you think it was a mistake. I did not go home for Christmas either. Instead, I spent it with Megan's family again, and then with a small group of friends from the hospital who also did not have traditional family gatherings. We made our own traditions that year: a potluck dinner, a white elephant gift exchange, board games that turned competitive and hilarious. I was learning that family did not have to mean the people who shared your blood. Family could be the people who chose you, who showed up, who made you feel like you mattered. And for the first time in my life, I was starting to believe that I deserved that kind of love. 6 months after my surgery, I was settling into my new normal. I had been promoted to charge nurse for the night shift, a position that came with more responsibility and a nice raise. I had started setting aside money for a down payment on a bigger apartment. I had even gone on a few dates, tentative steps back into a social life I had neglected for too long. My relationship with my family had settled into an uneasy truce. We talked occasionally, brief, surface-level conversations that never touched on anything meaningful. I had accepted that things might never change, that my parents might never truly see me. And I was learning to be okay with that. Then, in the middle of an April night, my phone rang. It was my mother, and she was crying. "Eden, please come home. Your father had a heart attack. He is in the hospital." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. "What hospital?" "When did this happen? About 2 hours ago. He is at Memorial General. They did some kind of procedure on his heart. They said he is stable, but we need to be here. Please come." I was already out of bed, reaching for my clothes. "I am on my way." The drive to Memorial General took 45 minutes. I spent every one of them thinking about my father, about all the conversations we never had, all the distance between us, about whether it was too late to bridge it. When I arrived, I found my mother and Brooke in the ICU waiting room. Brooke's husband, Derek, was notably absent. My mother looked older than I had ever seen her, her face pale and drawn with worry. Brooke was pacing back and forth, her arms crossed over her chest. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. My father had suffered what they called a STEMI, a serious type of heart attack caused by a complete blockage in one of his coronary arteries. The cardiac team had performed an emergency angioplasty and placed a stent to restore blood flow. He was in the cardiac intensive care unit, sedated but stable. I fell into my old role without thinking about it. My years as a nurse kicked in automatically. I asked the right questions, demanded clarification when the explanations were unclear, made sure I understood exactly what medications he was on and what the plan was going forward. My mother and Brooke stood by, helplessly overwhelmed by the medical terminology and the gravity of the situation. Over the next few days, I became the de facto manager of my father's care. I coordinated with the doctors, and nurses translated medical jargon for my family, handled the insurance paperwork, and arranged for home health services once he was discharged. And then Brooke said something that made me realize how little had actually changed. "Eden, you should take time off work to take care of Dad. You are a nurse, you know what to do. Derek and I are too busy with our jobs." I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. She seemed perfectly serious, as if what she was suggesting was completely reasonable. "Brooke, I have a job too. I cannot just drop everything. What about you?" My mother jumped in immediately. "Eden, Brooke has a lot on her plate. You are single, you do not have as many responsibilities. Please, for your father." There it was. The same old dynamic playing out once again. I was expected to sacrifice because my life, my career, my needs were somehow less important than Brooke's. But I was not the same Eden who had accepted this treatment for 27 years. "No," I said, and my voice was clear and steady. Both of them stared at me as if I had spoken a foreign language. "I will help," I continued, "but I will not take time off work while Brooke and Derek continue their lives as normal. We will share the responsibility equally. I will come on weekends and evenings after my shifts. Brooke needs to arrange her schedule too. This is not negotiable." "Eden," my mother started, her voice rising, but before she could continue, another voice interrupted. "Eden is right." We all turned. My father was awake, his voice weak but determined. He looked older and frailer in that hospital bed connected to monitors and IV lines, but his eyes were clear as he looked at each of us in turn. "She should not carry this alone. Brooke, you need to help too." There was a moment of stunned silence. In all my years, I could not remember a single instance when my father had sided with me over Brooke. Not once. Brooke's face flushed with something that might have been embarrassment or anger. She opened her mouth to protest, but one look from my father and she closed it again. "Fine," she said tightly. "I will figure something out." And for the first time in my life, I saw the dynamic shift. Not dramatically, not like a scene from a movie, but perceptibly. My father had acknowledged me. He had stood up for me. It was small, but it was something. In the weeks that followed, we actually did share the caregiving duties. I came on weekends and after work when I could. Brooke grudgingly rearranged her schedule to cover other days. My mother handled the daily tasks she was capable of. One evening, when I was sitting with my father while he rested, he reached out and took my hand. "Eden," he said, his voice rough, "I know I have not been the best father to you. I did not see it before, but I see it now. You were always there, even when we did not deserve it. I am sorry." The words hit me like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. I had waited my entire life to hear my father really see me. And here he was in a hospital bed finally doing exactly that. "I do not need you to be perfect, Dad," I said, my eyes filling with tears. "I just needed you to see me." He squeezed my hand weakly. "I see you now, and I am proud of who you have become." I sat there holding my father's hand, tears streaming down my face, and felt something inside me begin to heal. Not completely. Some wounds take longer than others, but it was a start. 1 year after my father's heart attack, my life looked different than I ever could have imagined. My father had made a full recovery. He changed his diet, started walking every morning, and even joined a cardiac rehabilitation program at the community center. But more importantly, he changed the way he showed up for me. He called regularly now, asking about my work, my life, my friends. He remembered things I told him and followed up in later conversations. It was awkward at first, two people learning how to connect after a lifetime of distance. But we were trying, and that mattered more than I could say. My relationship with my mother remained complicated. She never apologized for what happened during my surgery. I doubt she ever will. But her behavior shifted in subtle ways. She stopped openly favoring Brooke in every conversation. She asked about my life with what seemed like genuine interest. She remembered my birthday that year and sent flowers to my apartment. Small things, but after a lifetime of feeling invisible, small things meant everything. As for Brooke, we existed in a kind of polite distance. She never acknowledged her part in what happened. She never apologized for her selfishness or her dismissiveness. But I had made my peace with that. I could not control her behavior, only my response to it. I chose to stop expecting her to be someone she was not capable of being. I chose to protect my peace. I continued seeing Dr. Hammond, though less frequently than before. She helped me understand that healing is not a destination, but a journey. Some days were harder than others. Some days the old wounds ached like they were fresh, but I was no longer carrying them alone. Megan remained my rock, my sister, in every way that mattered. We had made our friendship official in our own way, calling each other sisters and meaning it. Her family had become mine. Sunday dinners at her mother's house were a sacred tradition. Her nieces and nephews called me Auntie Eden and climbed all over me whenever I visited. I had also found love. His name was Marcus, a software engineer I met through a mutual friend. He was kind and patient, and he made me laugh. He listened when I talked about my past and never made me feel like my wounds were burdens. When he met my parents for the first time, he held my hand under the table and later told me he was proud of how far I had come. Life was not perfect. It never is. But it was full. It was mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was living it on my own terms. I think a lot about that day in the hospital, the day I learned who would show up and who would not. For a long time, that memory was a source of pain. But now I see it differently. That day forced me to confront truths I had been avoiding for years. It pushed me to demand more for myself, to stop accepting less than I deserved. It taught me that love is not about words or obligations. Love is about showing up. I learned that setting boundaries is not selfish. It is survival. I learned that family is not always the people who share your blood. Family is whoever holds your hand when the world falls apart. I learned that the most important person who needs to show up for you is you. I do not hate my parents. I do not hate Brooke. Hatred is too heavy a burden to carry, and I have finally learned to set it down. But I never forgot who showed up and who did not. And that memory does not make me bitter. It makes me grateful. Grateful for the people who chose me when my own family would not. Grateful for the strength I found within myself when I had no one else. Grateful that I finally know my own worth. If you are watching this and you feel invisible in your own family, I want you to know something. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be chosen. And if the people who are supposed to love you cannot do that, it is okay to find your own family. It is okay to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, the most important person who needs to show up for you is you. So now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had to choose yourself when no one else would drop your story in the comments below? Let us build a community of people who see each other, who show up for each other, who remind each other that we are worthy of love. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you are not already subscribed, join this community. We share stories of resilience, healing, and hope every week. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who might be feeling alone right now, who might need to know that they are not the only one. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of yourself.